Hello and welcome to my favorite reads of 2023, part 2. I have more notes in case you watch part 1. Yes, I use 1990s school classic printed out notes, and I'm very excited to talk through my remaining 11 books. So if you watch the first part 1 had 12 of my top 23 of 2023, and what kind of grouped those 12 together is they're more popular, well known. I am so excited to share with you all today the remaining 11, which are not as popular and not as well known, and I wish everyone knew about these, but alas, they do not. So hopefully I can change that. But anyway, this is part 2 of my top 23 reads of 2023, and let's get started. My first book on here, it is Tower of Thorns by Jenna Wolfhart. So let me go. Here we go, Tower of Thorns. So this is book 4 out of 5 of her series called The Fallen Fae. If you are a Kindle reader like me, and if you have Kindle Unlimited, and if you don't have all 20 of your books checked out and have some space, I highly recommend the Fallen Fae series by Jenna Wolfhart. And I do have quite a bit of notes on this one. So I picked this specific book, Tower of Thorns, because it's book 4 of 5. So it's kind of like the start of the end, so to speak. So some huge things happen in book 3. And then book 4 is kind of, like I said, the start of trying to kind of bring everything together and close everything out. And it's just so fun to read. So let me just go through my notes. I do have my overall plot for this, for the series in general. It goes, the main character, Elayna, is one of 3 sisters. There's a darkness plaguing their land. The older sister, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but the older sister was supposed to marry this like fae king from another land. They're kind of like warring rival kingdoms. So in order to kind of stop this darkness, they're trying to create alliances. So the older sister was supposed to marry this king who's kind of like the enemy, but because they're trying to create alliances, they're like, fine, okay, we'll marry him. So the older princess was supposed to marry, but then she gets in this accident and can't. So then there's 2 princesses left, and the middle princess, her name is Elayna. She is our main character throughout the whole series. She agrees to marry the evil prince. I think his name is Thane, something like that. So she ends up engaged to him. And then the whole series kind of takes her through that, and then some things beyond. So it's kind of fun because it's definitely, and then there's like another character called Lorcan. So there's kind of like love triangle things going on. Definitely hidden identities. This whole series has my favorite trope of all time, surprise enemies to lovers. And what I mean by that is, as a reader, and usually at least one of the characters know that they're enemies, but the other character does not. And I love that because I love the realization when that character realizes, like, oh, I just fell in love with someone I should never love because you're evil. I love that kind of dynamic because then there's like a total switch. I think at least one other book on my list has that surprise enemies to lovers thing going on. It's also fun. The magic in this system's really fun. So in terms of like the courts, it's like winter court, autumn court, spring, if I remember correctly. So like each land, there's different kingdoms. They're all a little different. And yeah, it's just fun. So one of the notes that I wanted to give about this is it's an easy read. It's super fun. If you like Throne of Glass, I do think you would like this because kind of the first couple books sets up one thing and then you go in a different direction and you end up having this like total badass female main character, and like she's like fated for all these things. There's definitely like death and like a lot of really intense situations, and it moves fast. So like Throne of Glass is a total of 8 books, I believe, because it's 7, and then the prequel, The Assassin's Blade, this is 5 books. So you get, like, it's very fulfilling because each book is packed and each book just goes, and it's not really slow. There's not a lot of fluff. There's definitely important side characters and things, but it's just so fun. So if you're looking for another read, if you're looking for like a longer series with a well thought out magic system, a strong female main character, enemies to lovers type of vibes, hidden identities, and just like lots of stuff. I highly recommend the Fallen Fae series by Jenna Wolfhart, and my personal favorite was the Tower of Thorns, which was book 4, because again, that's kind of like the start of the end. I kind of think of it like Empire of Storms from Throne of Glass, if you read that series, because that's kind of like everything starts coming together. That's kind of like how this book is. So, the next on my list is A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows by Renee. Our main character, I didn't even write her name down. That is so rude of me. I usually write their names down. I'm so sorry to my main character. I know the main male character's name is Evren, if that helps, but I don't remember the main female character's name. But she essentially, so it's in this kingdom where she is a human, and then there's the Fae, and there's like rival Fae, and there's like the good Fae, the bad Fae. She is promised to wed the prince, the crown prince of the good Fae kingdom, essentially. And the reason why is because she's what's called, I think it's called star blessed. So some humans were born with like stardust or some sort of starlight in them, and they have like a tattoo, like they're just born with like this tattoo thing, and the larger your tattoo, the more power you have. So it's essentially power. So the Fae kind of kidnap or kind of like exchange. It's kind of like a slave trade kind of situation, honestly. Indentured servitude kind of situation. But essentially, when someone in the human realm is born, which is kind of like a poor, impoverished area, when someone is born star blessed, they immediately are going to go to the Fae. And our main character, she was born with like the largest, I think it's the largest back tattoo known to man, essentially. So then when she's born, she's essentially promised to the king, or the crown prince, excuse me, because their marriage union, like the star blessed, I don't want to give any spoilers in terms of how the power transfer works and what that looks like. It sounds so sexual, it's not. What that looks like is it kind of like helps enhance the Fae's power. So yeah, so she's born with this giant back tattoo because she's star blessed, and she's promised to the crown prince, and she does not want to go. She is not happy about like when she's like 16, 17, 18, whenever that year is where she then goes. And so yes, this book is really good. It's hard for me to go into more plot about this one without being spoilery, so I won't, but I do have a really good comparison. As soon as I read this book, it totally gave me From Blood and Ash vibes. However, if you've read From Blood and Ash, like the first book is so slow. It's great. It gives you so much detail about like the world and political system. Well, not so much, but you're kind of learning. This book is like From Blood and Ash, but on steroids. Like it moves. And so if you think about From Blood and Ash, it's like the main maiden, Poppy, is promised to ascend, and along the way she meets this like rugged guard guy that she kind of falls for. Similar situation here. You have our main character, Star Blessed. She's gonna go live with the Fae, be with the crown prince, but she has this like guard character, and of course there's like hidden identities along the way, but it's so fun. Tropes is, again, surprise enemies to lovers. It is very much touch her and die, fated mates, arranged marriage, and forced proximity. So it is so fun. I will say it's on the spicier side. So if you are not a fan of spice, and I will say, actually, I should have clarified this too. The previous series, The Fallen Fae, does have spice in it. It's not like super mega spicy, but I always like to say, if you don't like spice, you probably wouldn't like this, because this is a very spicy, like pretty quick. It's not like enemies become lovers and you have the one scene and then you get more scenes in books 2, 3. Like, no, you get some stuff. So if you don't like spice, probably not for you. If you do like spice, I think you'll be happy that there's quite a bit throughout, and it's fun. It's fun. The scenes are fun. Like, it's not overly obnoxious. It's I don't know, it's a fun book. It's really well done. It, like I said, it gave me From Blood and Ash vibes, but it felt way more rewarding because it wasn't a huge mega book with very little plot. It was a smaller book with lots of plot, lots of character growth, and you fall for the main characters quite quickly. The main male character, there's a couple main male characters. One of them, Evren, you'll just love him. He's so great. He's like the shadow daddy everyone wishes they could know, but everyone's too busy talking about Xaden and Rhysand, but more people should be talking about Evren. Evren's just great. So I highly recommend A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows by Renee. Okay, Next on my list, because I want to keep this going, is a vampire series. I know I've talked a lot about my fae books, my men with wings, and now we're going on to my men with sharp teeth book, Tethered by, I'm so sorry, because if you watch my part 1, I do admit that I am terrible at pronunciation. Elayna Gallea. I am so sorry. I'm probably pronouncing your name wrong. The main female character of this book is very pragmatic. She's very much like a thinker. She's not super emotional. And the main male character is like definitely more cinnamon roll-ish and definitely more emotional. And so that's kind of a fun twist, I would say. We do get that in other books, but I feel like with the vampire, where the human non-vampire is like more like the lesser of emotional beings, I think that's kind of fun to read, and I really enjoy that in this book. But this book has a very unique kind of plot and setup. So essentially you find out later in the series, and I even think you find out in this first book, this is a trilogy, all 3 books are out, and all 3 books are on Kindle Unlimited. So again, if you have the Kindle Unlimited subscription, you can totally get all 3 and binge them. But essentially, this human is promised to wed the vampire prince. She doesn't really know why. The humans, what they kind of get out of the deal is like trade rights and like some more prosperity. What the vampires get out of it, again, trade, but like it's the queen of the vampires. She is marrying off her son, because technically not son. She's just someone she changed into a vampire and kind of adopted as her son, and therefore the prince of the vampires. So she's marrying him off to a human. She hates humans. Like, she's such a hatred. She wants to destroy them all, and it's so confusing. Like, why would you marry your son off to a human? And why do you need the human realms? So that's kind of cool. You got a lot of questions like, why is this even happening? So again, it's forced marriage, but what happens is it's in the marriage ceremony, like, she doesn't need to turn into a vampire. Like, so it is human and vampire through, like, that's what it is, which I think is super fun too. But in the marriage ceremony, the priest does something funky, and essentially through their marriage bond, they become literally tethered. Well, not literally, like, they're not like at the hip tethered, but tethered together, so they can't go farther than, like, let's say, I think it's like, they don't give a number, but maybe it's like 20 yards from each other. And they learn that really quickly when, like, after their wedding, they try to like go to separate places, and they suffer like immense pain because they can't get away from each other. So now you have this male main character, the vampire, who's trying to do right by his wife because he hates it. He hates the fact that he had to marry her because he had a human lover before and things did not go well for her. And so he's trying to be like really respectful and kind and protective of his now wife, who's human, and he didn't ask for this. And now he can't even leave. And he just gets like so angsty about that. And like, she's really frustrated by it. So it's unique because they're then like constantly always together. And that is just so fun. So the first book is pretty much them, one, trying to stay alive because the queen then definitely wants to kill her. Like, great, I am selling my son to be married, to do deals with the human realms, and then it's like, now I hate her and I don't want her. So he's like trying to protect her. She's also very much a thinker and trying to figure out what's going on. There's some side plot that becomes larger down the line in the other books about like her brother and her family and this overarching like sickness, but it's so good. It's so unique because of the fact that they can't be separated, and just the dialogue that incites is fun. I will say I really loved this book because of the concept and the characters. What was rough, and I don't even say rough because it didn't bother me at all, but if you are someone like the last book, A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows, if you like that fast-pacedness, I don't know, I just want to set you up to know it is not fast-paced. It's not necessarily slow, but it's on the slower side. But I mean, with this book, you have to learn a lot. A lot comes more from the dialogue and just like the situations they're put in, so the plot feels slower, but it is still super good. It's also not the longest read in the world, so it's not like a 900-page book that's slow. It's like a 300-page book that's on the slower side, and the next 2 books do pick up the pace. They're not, the whole series in general, I feel like, is a little on the slower side, but it is very fun and unique and kind of a different take on the vampire genre because of the fact that he's the cinnamon roll character and because of the fact that they literally can't be like more than 20 yards apart. So that is Tethered. Okay, next on my list. I am so excited for this one because it's by one of my favorite must-buy authors. It is Den of Blades and Briars by L.J. Andrews. To kind of give a backstory about this, it's 9 books total, the Broken Kingdom series. The first 3 books are a very rough Beauty and the Beast retelling. The second 3 are a rough Cinderella retelling. The next 2, which is 7, this is book number 7, and 8 are a Swan Princess retelling, and then book 9 is like Phantom of the Opera vibes. So that is really unique, and it's also so it is high fantasy, it's fae, and each book, like, you go through, it's 4 different kingdoms, and each kingdom, while they all have magic, it's kind of a different type, and each kingdom calls magic something, like it's a different name. So if you're in one kingdom, they refer to magic as this. If you're in another kingdom, they refer to magic as this. And there's different types of magic depending on the kingdom you're in. So it is fun because as you read through the series, it doesn't kind of get stale. It kind of keeps that fresh, I would say, which I really, really enjoy. But it's Viking. It has this like Vikings feel, which I didn't think I would enjoy, but I really, really did, because it's also very refreshing when you're reading men with wings, Rhysand, or, vampire type of people like Castile Denier. It's really nice to have something refreshing. And so it's like, okay, great, we've got vampire men, or not, Viking men now. So fun. But the reason why I like this one in particular is because I did read books 4, 5, and 6, which is the Cinderella retelling, in 2023, and I wasn't the biggest fan. While I enjoyed it, I thought they were a little slow. The author, actually, L.J. Andrews, she says she went into this, I believe her plan was originally 12 total books. So of the 4 stories, each were going to get 3 books, and I think she may have realized after writing books 4, 5, and 6 that it's just 3 books is too much for some of the plot lines, and it was starting to really drag it on. So I was really happy because book 7, which is Den of Blades and Briars, book 7 and book 8 are, to get just 2 books together, make up the Swan Princess retelling. And they were perfectly paced. They were super, super fun, really unique characters, unique spin on the Swan Princess. And I really, really enjoyed them. So to kind of go into it, you also, if you start the series, you meet this guy named Ari. I don't know how to, again, I'm sorry about a pronunciation. I'm just going to own it. So I'm going to say Ari. You meet him in the first 3 books, and he kind of is in the next 3 a little bit, but it's really cool then to see him be like a main character. He is like quick-witted. He has the best banter and dialogue, so I was so excited for him to be main character because the dialogue is great, and like I said, the plot is good. But what happened in book 6 was kind of this battle. At the end of this battle, Ares' side won, and there was this one character, her name is Saga. She fought for the losing side. She fought for the bad guys, and her punishment is that she must be tied to Ari, like for the next like 30 or for amount of time. So she like has to like serve him, be his servant kind of thing. And it's kind of a punishment for Ari too, because before this battle took place, he was living in the same realm where Saga is, and so they knew each other and they disliked each other there. And so these books kind of delve into as to why they disliked each other, and it kind of follows them as he's wrongly accused of murder and he has to flee, and because she's a servant and like tied to him by magic, she not like tethered, she can physically leave him, but she just kind of goes with him. And so they both kind of learn there's a lot of there's definitely hidden identities. There is definitely enemies to lovers type of vibes, but it's kind of like an on the run, very fast moving, very quick witted, heavy banter book. And I think you will absolutely fall in love with Ari. He is such an incredible character and such a great male lead. And Saga, I like it when you start off a book disliking a character and the author then convinces you to like them by revealing things about them that you didn't know, and you're like, oh crap, she's actually not bad, she's actually going through her own struggles and all these kind of things. And it is a Swan Princess retelling, so I'm not going to give anything about that because it'll kind of give some of the stuff away. But it is so fun. And I will say, if you do like fairy tale retellings, I do think it's so saturated right now with Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast. Well, actually, mostly Beauty and the Beast is like the most popular retelling. So it's kind of nice to have something a little different, which this is. So I'm going through my notes to make sure I hit all of the top things, and I certainly did. So we are moving on. That was Den of Blades and Briars. So, okay. Next on my fancy 1990s notes list, To Flame a Wildflower by Sarah Parker. So this is the To Bleed a Crystal Bloom series. This is, it's not as well known because it's smaller. It's not like ACOTAR, which most people have heard of. I mean, I can say ACOTAR and you probably know I'm saying A Court of Thorns and Roses, right? So it's not as well known, but the people who have read it are pretty split. Like, this is a book where people tend to love it or they hate it. Not this book, but the series. I definitely was really, so here's how it goes. Book one, this book on my list, To Flame a Wildflower, is book 3 of 3, and this is supposed to be a 5-book series. So remember when I was talking about in the earlier the Fallen Fae, where I was like, I picked book 4 because it's kind of the start of the end. So now 3 books are out. The next 2 books are kind of like, we're gonna get to like, so this third book, this book right here, finished kind of the first part of the plot, and now we're kind of getting into like the end game of the series. So I'm excited to see where it goes. But I picked this book in particular as my favorite because there were just so many aha moments, and it is very slow burn as a series, and like everything kind of tied together. Like I said, so many aha moments. We had enemies to lovers in this book, and which we all know I love. Just super, super good. But I kind of want to walk you through it because if you've picked up the first book, To Bleed a Crystal Bloom, and put it down because it was insane, yeah, I know, I totally understand why. Or if you haven't read it and you're considering it, or you watch this video and you're like, I'll give it a try, I want to tell you why you should keep going. The author, I think, actually was very genius in the writing, but not really good for herself because she kind of can scare people away. So let me see if I don't have the synopsis, which is fine because it actually is really hard to talk about. So essentially, this is a dark Rapunzel retelling. When I say dark, this is dark. So if you think ACOTAR is dark, this is like the depths of the abyss dark. Like, this is a very dark series. There's a lot of gore. There's a lot of like uncomfortable sexual type of situations. It is not light at all. It is very, very dark. The characters' histories and what they've gone through, and the suffering of the world, like it's intense. So if you don't like that, you wouldn't like this. It's also a higher spice series, I would say, and it starts out like relatively in the beginning and gets more throughout the books. But I loved it. And so book 1, you have multiple points of view throughout the books, and in book 1 you'll like see things through the main female character's point of view, and then all of a sudden, her name is Orlaith or Laith. All of a sudden you'll switch to another character, but you can't comprehend what they're talking about, and it makes no sense because the characters, like the author, is strategically only showing you things from their point of view that don't give some of the bigger things away. And Orlaith herself is kind of trying to learn things, so we learn things as a reader as Orlaith learns things. So she was like found as a child. In her mind, she was found as a child by Riordan. He is the main male character, not the main male character. He is a male character, and she's like his ward, and he like saved her, I guess, and then she's just kind of grown up in his house. He's like a lord of the land. He's really high up there in the political structure of things, and she grows up in within his care, in his household, and you learn very quickly that she started to fall in love with him, and it gets to be uncomfortable because you kind of feel like it's this like age gap situation, and like, wait, wasn't he kind of like a father figure? And she kind of addresses that later on, where he wasn't a father figure, so she's kind of falling for him, but then there's you have 3 other love interests enter the picture. And one of the reasons why I love this series is because you don't fully know where it's going until book 3, actually until like the end of book 2, where the author really starts to wrap things up. But it's fun to read because as long as you go into it knowing this is going to be confusing and uncomfortable because you feel like she's falling in love with a father type of figure, which is not. She does address that in one of the books. Like he brought her into his home and then like left and wasn't there, and she didn't really see him again until she was like 16 or 17 years old. So it kind of has weird vibes, but she addresses it so it's not, because I will say that almost made me put the book down because I was like, oh, this feels kind of gross. But you don't really know where it's going because there's multiple main characters. She, again, like I said, dark Rapunzel. So when you think that, it gives you this idea like, oh, Riordan must be evil if he's like keeping her. You also don't know why he's keeping her because she can't like leave a certain circumference of the land, and then eventually she does, and like everything goes like haywire. But I can't really say too much because it'll just sound confusing without me giving major spoilers away. But I will say it was a fun read because it was so unique to read. And I remember going through it and being like, what the heck is happening? And as an avid reader, it's nice to have something different. It's nice to not be able to see everything that's coming down the line, and it's nice to have questions. And it really, for me, it actually made me want to read book 2 because I was like, I need to understand what the heck I just read. I need to continue this series. And book 2 is really where you start to get answers and it's like, there's like a veil over everything and it slowly gets pulled over and you as the author slowly learn things. This isn't a situation where you as the author know everything and you're waiting for the characters to catch up. It's actually the reverse. Some of the characters know everything, but they refuse to tell you. And the main character, it's weird. There's a lot she doesn't know, but what she does know, the author doesn't actively have her reflect on it until certain points because the author doesn't want you to know these things right away either. So it's such an interesting thing to read and so different. So I do really recommend this series if you like. She's also older in this book. I will say the main female character, she's 21 years old, which I prefer. I hate the whole 17-year-old. I don't like that. So I like the fact that she's aged up a bit compared to some of the other books that we get. But if you like multiple point of views, if you like spice, if you like dark, and I mean dark fantasy, multiple love interests and love triangles, and just like a super kind of twisted, confusing book, then that gets better. I highly recommend the series. And why I picked this one, this is book 3, and this was like so satisfying to read because after the first 2 books, being able to have everything kind of like laid out and cleared, it was like so rewarding as a reader, and it just made this book so fun to read. All right. Next up on my list, another book. I act like I wouldn't be excited about these books. So I'm excited about all of them. But this is Rule of the Aurora King by Nisha Tuli. Her books are starting to blow up. So Rule of the Aurora King. Her books are starting to blow up. Trial of the Sun Queen was her first book. This is the second one in the series. This, I think, is going to be a 5-book series. The next book, I believe, is coming out in either March or May of this year, and I am so here for it. I am so excited for it. But essentially, this has a lot of scenes that kind of this book. Actually, let me rewind this a little bit. So the first book, which I did love, it has like Bachelor meets Hunger Games type of vibe. So it is the first book, Trial of the Sun Queen. It's literally the trial of the Sun Queen. So the Sun King trying to find a queen. In order to do that, he has to put all these women through a trial, and it's horrific. And so it's like, like dating and fight to the death type of situations. Fascinating concept, but so fun. But you follow this main character. She's like trapped in a prison, like terrible prison life situation in one kingdom, and then another kingdom goes and kidnaps her to compete in the Sun Queen trials, and that's what it is. And you're like, she doesn't know. She's like, why was I picked? She was like, why was I pulled out of prison to compete in a kingdom I've never been to, and why is it important? And then the weird thing is like early on, like the Sun King like likes her, and you like, so as the reader, there's like other things going on, and it's really, really fun. But this book, the second one, what I like about it is this is a book series where it's one continual story, but the books feel completely different. Like book 2 picked up where book 1 left off, but we have, outside of like the main female character and a couple main side characters, we've got like a whole new cast and crew of people, and a whole new kingdom and a whole different type of plot. So it was such a refreshing read. Like I said, book 1 was Bachelor Hunger Games feel, where this book is more like going on a quest and trying to find things kind of feel. And book 1, like I said, that was like a competition type of book, if you're into the competition trope, which I do. I love the competition trope. Where this book is forced proximity with a completely different male character. But the world that she's building is so fun. And what I was starting to talk to, and then I talked to you about, and then I kind of backtracked and was like, I'll get there, was the fact that this book, like I said from the first book, it's like, why was she pulled from prison to go compete in this kingdom? Like, clearly something's going on. This book answers a lot of those questions from book 1. So even though it's a completely different feel, and it still references things in book 1, I don't know, it was just so well done. I really applaud the author for being able to write such a completely different book while continuing the story and it feeling cohesive and makes sense. And I'm really excited for book 3. But this book 2, I love books when books kind of fill in with the history. And so this book, while the majority of the book does take place in the present tense, it goes back in the past and you see characters' actions in the past, like not characters that we know now, but like characters from a long, long time ago and how their actions led to what's currently happening now. And you kind of slowly start filling in the gaps. Like you're learning things because you're going this way or I guess you're coming this way from the future, from the current. This makes no sense. But anyway, you've got past and present colliding to like fill in all those gaps, and it's so fun to read. Also, this is something where I think the banter between the two in this book, who the main male character is and the continuing main female character from the previous book, the banter is so fun. And again, it's so different from the first one because we have a new main male character. And it's just so good. The pacing is great too. It's not slow. It's not super mega fast. It's very tolerable, but I just felt like every page was rewarding. So that is Rule of the Aurora King, book 2. It's called the Artefacts of Ouranos series. I probably butchered that. We're just gonna move right on. So highly recommend. The main characters are named Lore and Nadir in this book. Again, Lore is the main female character, so she's probably going to be in all of them. And Nadir was a little bit in the first book, but didn't interact with her at all. He was like in a completely different part of the world, so it was weird reading the first book when you would get these point of view chapters from this guy who's nowhere around, and it's like, what? But so then it gets filled in a little bit, but it's a very rich world, lots of characters, really good plot, good paced. Highly recommend. By far one of the best books I've read. Well, it's why it's on my list, but like truly legit one of the best books I've read all year, and I cannot wait for book 3 to come out. Okay, next one. Ashley O'Donovan's debut novel, What Lies Beyond the Realms. This, again, we're going back into Darkville. So if you like dark, this is dark. It's not quite as dark as the Tablita Crystal Bloom series I just finished talking about, but it is darker. So what I do actually have the summary, so I'm going to read it because I got my notes, and here we go. Lyra Lewis, a courageous 18-year-old princess. So she's a little young. Again, 18. I'm like, can we just age them up a little bit? So in my mind, I pretend like she's 21. But in the book, she's 18. She's lived a life of oppression under the rule of her abusive sorcerer stepbrother and neglectful mother. I'm going to pause there, because sorcerer. One thing I love about this book series is you have fae, you have wolves, you have sorcerers, and I think there's a couple other entities if I remember correctly, but you kind of get them all, and again, they each have like different kingdoms, they each function differently, and so it's a very rich world, and I really enjoyed that. So she's in the sorcerer kingdom, and she's under her abusive stepbrother and neglectful mother. Like her mother is technically ruling but can't really manage it well, and the stepbrother's like trying to take over, and he's like really like uncomfortably abusive, like weird. And then she meets a mysterious man at a palace banquet. He's a fae, but before she can say anything, she's taken away by the Lichen King, who is the Wolven. So her family like sends her away to go be with the Wolven, or not, excuse me, they don't send her away. They bring in the Wolven King to like train her, and she's like, "Why do I need to be trained? Like this is weird." And then eventually kind of takes her away, or like he kind of like convinces her to, he's like, "I need to go out of town, but you should come with me so you don't have to stay here." And she's like, "Yeah, I guess I'll do that." um so anyway, so she's now with the wolves, and during that process her stepbrother like overtakes their like kingdom, while she's like starting to fall for the Lichen King. But then things get weird and she kind of like escapes, and she goes back to her kingdom, finds that her brother's now in power, and she's like locked in the castle, and that mysterious fae she met comes and like rescues her. And that's kind of like the main setup of the book, and that's a huge, getting to that point is a lot of the book. But it is so fun, and I probably just said a lot, and that's one of the reasons why I like this book, is because it's very rich in characters, in the world. I love it with a book when you move in different places, and you definitely do. You have the sorcerer realm, you go to the Wolven realm, or the Lichen realm, I should say, and then you go to Wolven. That's not even a formal term. That's from like Blood and Ash. So sorry, like werewolf type of situation. You go to the Lichen realm, and then you go to the Fae realm, and then she ends up like in the underworld type of situation. And the next book is slated to come out next month, February 2024, and I am so excited. I'm trying to see what other notes that I made, because this is also one where I don't want to give too much away. I don't even really want to give the tropes away, because I don't really want, any assumptions to be made, because there are multiple love interests for her. And in book 3, there's like another love interest, and it really has this really formalized love triangle that's going to develop, which I'm super excited about. But like I said, multiple potential love interests on the darker side, and there definitely is some spice, both good and bad, where it's like she's put in uncomfortable situations, and then, situations she wants to be in. But it's a really rich, diverse world, really fun character. She's got this dog, I think his name's Cheppy, this like half dog, half like dragon, like baby dragon type of thing, if I remember correctly. But it was just so much, it's just really well done world building. It felt new and fresh, and it was just a fun read. It was fast paced, but you didn't feel like it was lacking in terms of character development. And yeah, it was just so well done, and I can't wait to read the next book. So that was What Lies Beyond the Realms. And now we're going to get to The Ever King. This is a pirate fantasy romance book. I normally don't like pirate books. And one of the reasons why I think it is because, like I've mentioned, I like books where it's a diverse location and you're moving. And a lot of pirate books, you're just on a stinky boat in the ocean, like just very wet, and there's a lot of ship, and I just get kind of bored. I get kind of bored with that. You're not even like a huge castle where you can move around a lot. So, but this one has a lot of different locations, and this is true enemies to lovers. I think Don't Blame Me by Taylor Swift is the song that I associate with the love story between the main male character and the female main character. There are also lines in this book that made me literally laugh out loud between the banter between them. And it is just so well written. It is so good. I feel like I've used the word refreshing a lot in this video, and it's true. I feel like this is a refreshing read if you're continually reading a lot of these like more popular books, or just like kind of the kind of quintessential fae high fantasy. And this one was so fun and a little different. And essentially, I do have the summary here, so I will read it. And so I said, for years, Eric, the scarred king of the Ever Kingdom, has thought of nothing but vengeance against the man who killed his father and trapped him beneath the waves, making him a prisoner in his own realm. So this happened. That plot happens in the Broken Kingdom series, which I talked about earlier. But essentially, he's the king of the Ever realm, which kind of lives like underneath the sea, but it's kind of thing with like a different realm. So it's not just under the sea. Like there's like land, like a whole nother earth essentially that he is king of, and he is trapped there because this king on land fought his family. His family lost, and then trapped Eric, the main male character, in his own land, and can never come out. So he's a prisoner in his own land, his own realm. And then it says, until his enemy's daughter unintentionally breaks the chains that's kind of locking him away. And he makes her the unwitting pawn in a vicious game of revenge. So it is revenge plot. But essentially, when they were kids, they met the main male character, Eric, and the main female character. She is the daughter of the king, Valen Ferris. And when they are kids, they meet, and she like kind of like gets all googly eyed and like falls for him. And so later on, and that's he's like all she can think about like growing up, even though she knows that he's like awful. And then she doesn't realize she's met him. And then she realizes too late that she's being kidnapped by him, because he thinks that, oh, if I kidnap the enemy's daughter, things will happen. I'll get what I want. I won't go too much into detail exactly what he's looking for, because it could be a little spoilery. But so she's like kidnapped by the man she's always dreamed of, and she's like, wait, why are you doing this? But she also kind of wants to be there, so she like super fights it. But like I said, the banter between the two of them is like so good. It made me laugh. I really enjoyed their story, and I really enjoyed kind of seeing the darker side of the main character and the lighter of the main female character, and getting to see Eric Bloodsinger, the main male character, see him as not as bad as kind of he's portrayed in the other books and how he's portrayed in the beginning of this. But highly recommend it. This is, and it's getting really popular. Clearly people are picking up on it. So it's, cause I see more and more people reading it and talking about it, but highly recommend The Ever King by L.J. Andrews. Must buy author. I will read everything she comes out with. Next on my list is another book by another must-read author, Nectar of the Wicked by Ella Fields. So Ella Fields, again, this was a Kindle Unlimited book that was recommended to me. I read all of her I think I've read all of her works so far. And her books are, like I said, she's a must-read author, and this book is my favorite of all of her books that she's written. I actually just finished the second book to this, and it's a duet, so I'm completely done with the story. Oh my gosh, it's incredible. I can't talk about it because it's a 2024 book, and we're talking about 2023. But one of the things I really appreciate about her books is, even though they're high fantasy with fae, and usually they're darker and they're spicy, is the relationship between the characters rings true to how people would kind of interact in reality. So like if I felt slighted by my significant other, the actions that I feel like I would take match the actions that the characters take in these books. Like it's a very real feeling dynamic. It's not this like magical, it's not like, like things that I don't think are magical. When Feyre in ACOTAR is covered in crap fighting a worm, and Rhysand's like, wow, no, that's not, that things like that you get in like other series that are just so unrealistic, you don't get in her books, which I really, really appreciated. She writes really well done, true to life dynamics between these characters. And so it does feel darker because you kind of miss out on that like fantasy fairy tale-esque happily ever after type of situations. And it's not that her books don't end happily. I'm not saying that they do end happily, but I do feel like she writes in a way that is more true to life, even though it's a fae book. So I love this book because it is surprise enemies to lovers. Again, my favorite thing, one of the characters has no idea that they're enemies. And when that character finds out, it's a lot of anger. But essentially, this book is, I do, let me see if I do. So I have the summary. I'm going to read part. I'm going to just read it because I think it does a better job than I would. There is no escaping the Middlelands, the gloomy buffer between the human kingdom and the fairy realms. When my guardian is killed by the wild hunt after waiting 20 years to trade me for her human daughter, I'm left with no choice but to try. To find those who discarded me at birth, I must sneak into fairy, but my deceased guardian left more than scars upon my heart. Debts are owed to the madam at the lair of lust, and I'm forced to repay them. My first client is a fairy king who offers to give me everything I've always wanted. The king will take me to fairy if I make a blood vow to marry him. A collection of sweltering meetings fool me into believing his reasons for choosing me to be his queen, a changeling without so much as a name. So that probably sounds confusing. Essentially, it's this fae who was left in the human realms with this guardian who's awful. So it was like a popular like thing that happens in fae books is like the changeling thing, where a fae takes their baby and swaps it with the human baby. And so their baby just grows up in the human lands and the human baby grows up in the fae lands. And so this our main character, she is Tulia, I think is her name. Tulia, she is left with this awful guardian who raises her, and the guardian raises her in hopes that one day she can trade back this fairy girl for her own daughter. And so the Wild Hunt is like the only group of fae that travel to the Middle Lands, which is it's like where the humans live, as well as like outcasts from the fae lands, criminals and things like that. So it's kind of like a really scummy, scary area that our main character lives. But her guardian is killed. The Wild Hunt gets like angry and like just does her in. And so our main female character is always dreamed of trying to get back to fairy and kind of see like what happened. Why did my parents abandon me? I don't belong here. I belong over there. She's now left with debts, and her guardian's job was like a stripper, and now she has to like take on the debts. And like I said her first client is a fae king, but he's like purposely her first client. Like he knows who she is, but she doesn't know who she is. And so she's like, why are you interested in me? And he's like, well, why wouldn't I be interested in you? But we all know he's got other motives, right? And so she's just so desperate to get out of this awful land and to go to a fairy. And he also kind of promises, I'll help you find your family. And then she discovers when she gets there that they're actually like enemy rival kingdoms, and he kind of kidnapped her under false pretenses. He didn't really kidnap her, but a lot of under false pretenses. And that's kind of where the book is like trying to figure out how she feels about him, trying to get back to her family, trying to navigate. Now she went from one awful world till now she like lives and she's like engaged to the Fae King, and everyone hates her. And she's like, why does everyone hate her? And he's like, gosh, I don't know, but he does, because she's the daughter of like the rival kingdom. But anyway, it's really well done. It gives me Game of Thrones vibes. And what I mean by that is there's different kingdoms within the Faeland. They all function a little differently. So he's like more like the Winter Kingdom-esque. The rival kingdom is more like springy, I think. But the political structure of both kingdoms is different. The way the castles and like it's all very, it feels like Game of Thrones, where it's like each kingdom is really different and acts different and has different type of like ceremonies and all kinds of things. And I also, one of the things that I love about this book, which you don't get in a lot of high fantasies, is that the main female character, she is not an assassin. She is not skilled. She is just trying to survive and doing the best with the knowledge that she has. And I really enjoy that type of situation, because it's harder to relate to the 17-year-old who, is the greatest assassin in all the land, but it really makes you feel for the characters. And as the dynamics change between the main male character and the main female character, it's really fun and interesting to read that. And then book 2, I said, was a fantastic closeout. So I will say, even though I can only talk about book 1 in this video, it is a duet. You can now read book 2 on Kindle Unlimited, or definitely go buy it because it's worth the buy. But the second book really finishes up nicely, and I felt really fulfilled by this series, and it was a really good read. So if you like multiple points of view, because there are multiple points of view, if you like high fantasy, and if you like dark and spicy books, I do think you would enjoy this and would definitely enjoy reading this. And I also recommend all of Ella Field's books. She's got like this like fae notebook type of story. So if you love the Notebook, like she's got another one, I think it's called the a prince so cold, or a king so cold. You can go look it up, but her writing, it's fun because she tries to bring in like popular modern day stories and kind of like put it in there to kind of make it a little more unique in a fae way, but it is really enjoyable. So that is Nectar of the Wicked next up on my list, and we are so close to being done. We have 2 more books, which I'm going to go through quickly. The next book is House of Striking Oaths by Olivia Wildenstein. This is book 3 of 3 of like this crow magic system. I don't even know. So I love this book because it was different. Like, the location, it is a fantasy. It gets spicy. There's some spice in the first one, it gets more, but essentially you have this main girl who is, I think she's like part fae, but she's not full fae, so she's kind of outcast on this island. And she grew up with the prince, like they went to school together. She's in love with the prince. The prince has like kissed her, and she think the prince has kind of led her on, like he loves her back. And she gets this like oracle, I think, who tells her like, you are destined to be queen of the land. You just have to find all 5 crows, stone crows. And she's like, okay. So she goes on this trip to find these stone crows. And like once she finds them and like touches them, I think each crow has like an arrow. So like once she removes the arrow from a crow, it becomes a real life crow. And then as she gets all 5, it like grows into this massive crow. But she's like actually unleashing this like old high power fae king, and she doesn't know it. And it's just so unique, and it's so fun, and it's so well done. It is enemies to lovers. It is a fated mate story. Has really unique magic systems. It also feels like I think I put Venice, Italy, like it, or not, is it Venice, Italy that I put? Yeah, I put Venice and Greece. It kind of has like this water feel. There's lots of like fish and like little water towns. If you've ever seen Luca, I think it's Pixar, not just Disney, but it kind of, or if Luca was real life, like that's like the environment I'm imagining. And there are water creatures, like she is part fae, and so she can, well, you actually find out that she's not just part human, and there's other stuff involved. Again, there's like different magic systems and different types of beings, and she's kind of a conglomerate of a couple. And it is just so fun. And I love the dynamic between, she thinks she loves this one guy, and she doesn't even know she's releasing this other guy into the world who's like falling for her in a way as she's like releasing his like crow beasts things. I'm probably making no sense, but let me tell you, this is so good. And if you go on Goodreads, this series has fantastic reviews. It's like once people discover it, they're like, oh my gosh, I wish I had seen this sooner. So that's House of Striking Oaths. This is book 3 of 3. Again, there's something about books that end well, I tend to be my favorite in the series, because sometimes it's hard to end a series because there's so much to wrap up, and this one wrapped it up, and I really enjoyed it, and it left the door open. I think the author has another book coming out this year, actually, that continues a story for some of the side characters in these books. So it is on the spicier side as it progresses. I did want to share that with you. Okay, last but certainly not least on our book, a book list, is The Throne of Broken Gods by Amber Nicole. Every time I see this book, I'm like, what is that? And because I associate it completely, I call this the Book of Azrael, book 2. So the Book of Azrael, it looks like Haunting Adeline, which I'm not a fan of. And so every time I went to go on Kindle Unlimited, I would see it, I'd be like, is that what I think it is? And then I'd be like, wait, no, it's not Haunting Adeline, it's something else. But it's so fun. If I had to give this book a Taylor Swift song, it's Call It What You Want. I'll let you read it and then figure out why. But this is book 2. It's not the end of the series. At least one more book is coming out. A lot happens in this book. There's plot twists that you don't see coming. It gets to be very, very dark. The main character, her name is Diana. Essentially, the Book of Azrael is, you find out real quick, this is a situation where the female main character is 100% the villain, like evil, awful villain. And the main male character, Liam, he has a couple names, but Liam, he's the good guy. And so I didn't realize when I first picked up the Book of Azrael, which is book 1 to this book 2, when I first read the first chapter, I was like, what is going on? And then I realized, like, oh my gosh, like, she's the bad one, which is so fun and so different. But she slowly starts to be good in the first one, and it's kind of like a quest book. Like, they're going on a quest for this thing called the Book of Azrael, and she also doesn't really know how she knows how she came to be. She works for this like really evil guy named Caden who saved her. She thought she was a human, and she was like dying, and he saved her and her sister. And like in payment for that, she has to work for him. So she wasn't like inherently evil. She just like has to do his bidding because he's also like holding her sister's life over her head. And it's like, huh, if you don't kill this guy, I'm just gonna kill your sister. And she's like, oh darn it. So that's kind of like her backstory. But book one, she goes on this quest with the good guy. Liam is his name, and then this huge event happens at the end of book one, which kind of bring her back, and she's just going on this like tyrant, awful spree, really like revenge plot, vengeance. I feel like this one was a little slow to start, but I really liked it because I thought the character development was really, really enjoyable. What else did I put in my notes here? Yeah, the female main character is super dark, which is really interesting. The title of the characters is World Ender meets Ender of Worlds, which is so fun because the main character, the main good guy, he made mistakes that caused a lot of deaths, and so there's a lot of bad and good between the two characters. But it is just, I think the whole series is called Gods and Monsters, so I don't know how many books it's going to be. But if you are on Kindle Unlimited and you see the Book of Azrael and you feel like, is that haunting Adeline? No, it's not. It's the Book of Azrael. Highly recommend it. The reason why book two is my favorite of the series is because I really enjoyed her once she was starting to be good and see her mistakes and try to atone for all the awful things that she did, see her go on that journey only for this awful thing to happen to kind of put her back in like this super emotional vengeance revenge spree. And that was, in a weird dark way, really fun to read. And again, I'm not used to reading books where the main female character is the villain, and in this situation, like it's not morally gray. No, she's legit awful. And she doesn't really want to be. She was kind of forced into it, but then she kind of grew into it and like owns how evil of a person character she is. And again, she has a lot of dynamics to her and changes. And so does the main male character too, because like I said, he did something that caused like his world to die. And so while he's inherently good, he's like miserable and depressed and a loner because he like blames himself for all this stuff that happened years ago. And when they meet, it's so fun how they interact with each other and how they affect each other. And so yeah, just highly, highly recommend. Again, another Kindle Unlimited read. So that is The Throne of Broken Gods. And that is it. That is all she wrote. That is my top 20, that closes out my top 23 reads of 2023. So if you have read any of these books, especially my first 12, the more popular ones, yeah, let's chat. But these ones that are more independent, please chat with me. You can DM me on Instagram at Morgan in Bookland. Please leave comments here. I would love more. As you can probably tell, I really like talking about these books. So please, I really want to talk about these books. It would just make me so happy. And if you want any recommendations or suggestions on where to start with any of these, especially if you have Kindle Unlimited and you're like, great, Morgan, you just gave me 11 books that I can go get on Kindle Unlimited and not sure where to start, I would love to help you through that. But again, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time.